back. And after this, let's see if we can find some good quotes for you here. After this occurred, we had statements from Kerry in particular, telling Poroshenko, right, the madman, the fascist dictator of Ukraine, was told by Kerry to cool it. That somehow an understanding was beginning to emerge, a way out of this crisis, a path towards something better. And Kerry was telling this awful Poroshenko to quit it. And then, however, things got turned around. Now, this was the subject of an appearance by Stephen Cohen, Professor Stephen Cohen, yesterday, I believe, that would be the 18th of June, on the Russia Today network, Oksana Boyko, I think. So, on the 12th of May, Kerry warned Poroshenko to cease, to stop his threats, to stop talking about Crimea, to stop talking about Donbass, and essentially get ready for peaceful solutions. Then, however, we have Victoria Nuland, right, this horrible, odious warmonger witch. She comes out and says, "We reiterate our deep commitment to a single Ukrainian nation, including Crimea and all the other regions of Ukraine." That's Nuland. Now, a real Secretary of State would have fired her the same day. A real president would never have gotten it in there. Speaking at a news conference, so Poroshenko is continuing. He wants Crimea back. Speaking at a news conference on June 5th, Poroshenko says, "Every day and every moment we will do everything to return Crimea to Ukraine. It is important not to give Russia a chance to break the world's pro-Ukrainian coalition." Well, it may be wide, but it's not very deep, Porno. We'll be back in a minute. Needless to say, you're going to find everything that you hear on the program developed in more detail at tarpley.net. Tarpley.net. You'll also find books of mine. By the way, if you want to get some good lines of investigative research, opposition research on Jeb Bush, you got to get that Bush biography of 1992. That's a while ago, but I still had material about Jeb Bush being implicated in Iran-Contra drug running and gun running. And that was when he was the Miami-Dade Republican chairman, and then a little bit later when he was the Secretary of Commerce of the state of Florida. Because remember, George H.W. Bush had two essential machines, right? One is the one he created in Texas, starting from Houston with Tough Tony Farish and the rest of these hacks and operatives. But he also then had, as a good CIA man, George H.W. Bush had that entire political operation. It was essentially the political cover on CIA Miami station, JM Wave. That's all in the Bush biography. So if you don't have it, you better buy it. And all you 20 Republican campaigns out there, Oppo research guys, you want to make your life easy? Go start off with that book of mine, and you'll find all about Jeb Bush and Don Aronow, the gangster, the drug smuggler, how Don Aronow's mysterious death, mysterious murder, somehow helped Jeb Bush to remain unsullied by the kinds of scandals that otherwise were about to come down on his head, and so forth. So, yesterday on this Oksana Boyko, that was again the 18th of June, Stephen Cohen says Sochi came and there were the beginnings of a deal, the first thing being to tell Poroshenko to cool it, but then after Nuland came out with her tirade and her bellicose and Russophobic statement, then the Sochi agreement seemed to fall apart, right? That Sochi really no longer existed. Possibly. And who's doing what to whom, right? Is it, some people say Biden, because Biden, of course, Biden has Hunter Biden, right? His son is a speculator and rip-off artist trying to enrich himself at the expense of the people of Ukraine. We know from the visit that I had with Boris Litvinov that Hunter Biden came in there and said, I want to buy your coal reserves, and the answer was no, niet. And that's the kind of language that Hunter Biden and the rest of these imperialists simply do not want to hear. They want the bowing and scraping of these characters like Poroshenko or Yatsenyuk or some others. So there's also the question then, what happened to Kerry? A lot of speculation. I wouldn't join in it except to say that there is some opinion that what occurred with Kerry was not so much that he was cycling or that he had a spontaneous bike crash near, I guess, the French-Swiss border as he was there for various talks, but rather that something was done to him. Now, the done to him could mean all sorts of things, right? What kind of an event could put you in the hospital for a couple of weeks, assuming that's that he really was in under doctor's care in a hospital. It could be that somebody made sure that his bike crashed, or it could be that there's more violence involved. Just remember, there are some forces that apparently care very, very much about these sanctions. As soon as you talk about ending the sanctions, there are certain groups that go wild, as Hollande found at the beginning of January when Hollande went on the French radio and said, we've got to end the sanctions against Russia. Well, then look what happened. That's the Charlie Hebdo story, right? That's what occurred. So it's perfectly possible that Secretary Kerry had a bike crash that was assisted as a result of this stuff that he had been saying. Okay, so we can't decide that. If people know something about it, hard facts, that would be highly interesting. But you get the idea. So this is what's going on. Now, the other side of this thing, the increased conflictuality, has to do with Greece, and we're going to talk about Greece at some length. But the idea is Greece has the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has made the trip to St. Petersburg. Now, this is an area I actually visited precisely this exhibition ground. When I was there, it was for something called Panorama Berlin, which was a kind of reenactment, a three-dimensional diorama that you'd walk through of the Soviet Red Army arriving at the Reichstag in May of 1945, and that was a highly, highly interesting thing, and I'll have more to say about that in the near future. But so this same area is now the scene of it's the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. So Tsipras went there, met with Putin, and what could come out of that? Well, I would hope, as I've said repeatedly, the new BRICS Bank is a great thing, but you got to use it. You can't just keep it on the mantelpiece and keep it polished. If you've got the BRICS Bank, finally, even rather late in the day and even on a smaller scale than we needed, well, then use it, right? Let them play the role of the IMF, right? The IMF gives you a certificate of good health, right, of respectability, and then other lenders will lend to you. Well, let the BRICS Bank do that, and then let some Chinese banks or others make some loans to Greece. That would be a good idea. Now, we'll have to follow that closely, right, because there's a couple of things. One is next week we're going to have a meeting of the European Union, foreign ministers, I think, or prime ministers, right, heads of government, and that's going to be about do the Russian sanctions get extended, yes or no? We have now reached the 1 year mark on these idiotic, counterproductive, misbegotten Russian, anti-Russian sanctions. And then, of course, that has brought in the counter sanctions, right, against agricultural products and food. Nobody imagines that these sanctions have had any serious effect. As I said when I was in St. Petersburg, a distinguished educator said, the average Russian has no idea that there are sanctions, right? Russia is so huge and so diverse that these are pinpricks. Nobody knows. And he said, you could even have a decline of 1%, 2%, nobody would notice. He said you could have a decline of 15%, and the Russian people would not be seriously fazed by that, right? They would continue on the current course because they understand what it is. At the same time, their anger is rising against the hypocrites and the practitioners of the double standard. So that's next week. If Greece is being treated really badly by the European Union, the Eurocrats and Eurogarchs, and the Euro zombies that control them, then Greece might say, no, we veto any more sanctions against Russia. They could do that. I urge them to do it. Of course, it's a complex calculation. Then, however, there's this other thing. The countermeasures seem to include economic warfare that has escalated. We're talking Yukos, and I guess that's Khodorkovsky. Remember him? Khodorkovsky said, I'm the richest man in the country. I should have a coup, kick out Putin, and become the prime minister. And the answer to that was, no, you go to Siberia for 10 years. We'll be back in a minute. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Now, we want to get our report from Greece. The stories we have here that the various forces have organized a modest run on some Greek banks, $2 billion or euros in the last 3 days or so. Tsipras has gone to St. Petersburg for the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, met with Putin. Russia is disposed to provide help, but no specifics so far. It also looks like one of the Russian gas pipelines is going to go through Greece, so that's an important dimension. The sanctions vote in the European Union is next week, and the question now is, did Tsipras get some help? Did he get some assurances of help? Is he going to be able to use the support from Putin in some way as a means of bludgeoning the Eurocrats and the Eurogarchs? Let's go to our excellent correspondent in Athens, Michael Chitinas, and get the lowdown on all that. Michael, welcome.
Hello, Webster. Well, Putin didn't give any specifics, but of course we know that things are sure to have been discussed, and a memorandum of cooperation on this pipeline was signed, including a full financing by Russia of this pipeline. And this is interesting because we have yet to see if this pipeline is going to become a reality. This is a huge thing, and it has come so fast that I'm not sure about it, because it brings Greece in a place of clashing with NATO in unprecedented ways. So we'll see about that. And there's a possibility that this might be just a negotiation thing. So Varoufakis was at the Eurogroup meeting of Eurozone finance ministers Thursday, where he tried to present yet another very realistic Greek proposal, but he was interrupted and wasn't allowed to present it in the end. The proposal had new mechanisms that would guarantee primary surpluses, so no new austerity, but a temporary debt restructuring without a haircut, simply to put an end to the